Hiya Squishers, and welcome to the first episode of Squishmas. That's right, not Christmas, not Vlogmas, but Squishmas. I'm going to squish all the things into a daily log. Lindsay Padmore left me a message on my YouTube channel saying, Vlogmas? And I was like, what, miss? And I was like, oh yes, miss. When I read about what Vlogmas was, I was like, this is the perfect way for me to bite-size condense into 24, 25 days. What am I doing? What am I making? Where have I been? Where have I gone? What's going on? Mostly all that stuff. So welcome to the first episode of Squishmas Under the Stairs with the Socks. And today's episode, we're going to be talking largely about tubes, from tube to top. The beginnings of Kate Celine. Like, it sounds weird when I say it because that's my real name is Kate Celine, but mostly I say it because I never expected any of this. I can tell you now, this is not what I thought my future looked like. So today I thought, how best to start the Vlogmas? Then to start with a bit of lip balm, of course. To start from the very beginning. And don't worry, we won't be there very long because we don't need to be. And I may trim some details at the beginning of the Kate Celine story because I'll tell you, it's a bit triggering to me, and also it might be a bit triggering to you. So I'm just going to be vague, but mostly tell you why this is like a big part of my life. So welcome to Under the Stairs. This is one of the squishy places I keep all of my yarn. And I say that not with confidence because I know the yarn is everywhere. It's spread far and wide throughout my house, but there are two spaces where I get snuggled up with the stuff. So here we are, under the stairs with all of the socks, which is so appropriate for today's chat, because today, whilst I knit one of my tubes, we are going to chat about tubes to top. What, where, when did I start knitting? Because today is the 1st of December. And many of you across the world may be opening up an advent calendar of squish of some sorts, or you may be for the first time thinking, well, actually I'd like to start knitting, and you might not know whether or not now is the time is when I can tell you now is the time. So when did I start knitting? Well, I started knitting at a time where I never expected it. So to keep it brief, I had a big life incident. It involved a car and me, and there wasn't much of my car left, and I found myself in a wheelchair for, let's say, at least 4 months after it, but mostly my daughter was 6 months old at the time, and I spent an awful lot of time stuck in a wheelchair after getting out of hospital, after an extended stay where I broke most things, which is why I'm ever so grateful that my hands work. Like, it's amazing the things that you don't realize you're grateful for. My arms and my hands actually work, which is why I make them work for me all day long, because that is the joy of having things that work, isn't it really? So I found myself sitting down a lot, and not just sitting down enjoying myself, sitting down confined to a space that I couldn't get out of, and washing a cup by the sink, standing up for a minute or two by myself. No, that's not true. Assisted by something was remarkable for me. So when I found knitting, it was after my shoulder and my arm started to recover, and I was still making jewelry, because before I knit I was jewelrying, which is why every now and again you see a flurry of jewelry whippering around. But I couldn't make jewelry because I couldn't sit on a jewelry bench, and I couldn't make jewelry things because my arms wouldn't work properly, and it just wasn't the right thing. So knitting fell into my lap because it was the only thing that I could truly control in my life at that point. Literally, it was the only thing I could do. Was what was on my lap. Like, that was it. And I'm pretty sure somebody else is going to have the same response. Like, there's sometimes that's all you can, that's it. So knitting for me became a way out of where I was sitting, and it became the only thing that I could do for myself. Like, it was crazy. And also, it's a thing that kind of like projected me on. So started knitting whilst I was sitting. There you go. Which is largely how my knitting life is. But I also go walking around a lot. I walk around quite a bit. And my main goal, after spending a lot of time sitting, was to be walking. when my daughter learned how to walk for the first time. So that was my main goal. So I wanted to be able to knit when I walked, because by then tubes were my bag and I loved knitting tiny tubes, which is why tubes are my thing. They're tiny, they're portable. So I started knitting on my lap, moving it around when I started walking, which sounds crazy, but that was a big deal for me, being able to be mobile and walking around, big deal. So I wanted to take my little bit of control fun with me. So that's how I started. I started from a place of nothing. Like literally all the things I was able to do suddenly disappeared and I'd start from scratch. So once I started knitting, it wasn't enough. Do you know, sometimes it's just not enough. It's not enough to just knit. I wanted to explore colour. And the colours that were available to me were very solid colours, which I really embraced. Then I found Neuro yarn and I was like, oh my gosh, like what is this? And from there, I started dyeing yarn with Kool-Aid. Now seriously, this is a serious side note. First day of Christmas, Squishmas, Vlogmas. If you're watching this and you've thought about dyeing yarn, do it, please, do it. It is so much fun. You don't have to do it like you don't, this is not what you have to be doing. Like this is not what I was supposed to be doing. But you can have an immense amount of fun in a small bit of space, dyeing up some yarn for yourself and your family, or just to have a go. It's just so much fun. That's why I'm here. So knitting from a wheelchair, to walking with my knitting, to being pregnant and dyeing yarn because I was like, whoa, to knitting my first handmade thing for Tabby when she was tiny. I remember doing that. So my journey through knitting or dyeing yarn has been around my two small, tiny people, which I make an effort to spend as much time with as possible, which is why I no longer leave the house to go to work and I work from home, which is where we are right now. And from tubes, these tubes here, which are the kind of stuff it is the stuff I started with. These have traveled along with me for the whole way. And if you were to ask me, what is the thing you should start with? Today, on day 1 of December, if you're looking at your Advent kit going, what am I going to knit? Tubes, because you can take them anywhere. And you can start off small. You can get yourself circular needles, which are my favourite because there's less faffing around. The other thing I had a problem with is I couldn't knit with sticks because I ended up poking tiny feet, or you know, you can't see into bellies, or carrying people, and I used to knit whilst carrying small people because that was a lot of fun. Circular needles have been my best friend because I just have 2 things to hold. So if you can travel with your knits, that's a joy. And also if you're knitting your Advents, it's a perfect way to get you going because you've got that incentive of every time you're sitting, you can do a bit of knitting. So if you're on the bus, knitting. If you're sitting at lunchtime, knitting. And tubes go from being small, they traveled with me. And I was like, well, what else can I do with a tube? Like, I know it's so simple, but what makes it exciting for me is the colours like this. Whoop! This is my joy. The tubes are the vehicle for my colour exploration. It's like a canvas. So tubes are just where I'm going. You can go from small tubes to bigger tubes, playing with colour. Like if you're looking for an Advent project, you don't have to do all of the colours in one piece. You could split them up and do a couple of pieces. How much fun. Like you could do a couple of pairs of socks. You could do 2 cowls. Ooh! So my tubes just got bigger and fluffier and squishier and more fun. And then I started playing with patterns and I was like, oh yes. And obviously spots are a whole different conversation for a whole different day. Maybe that'll be another Vlogmas episode. But you can go from a tube, from a sock, from a tiny thing, right the way to a top. Oh yeah, for serious. Like this will be something I'll be doing a bit more of next year because I got more time. That time thing I made, there's more time for things like this. Because if you are watching this thinking, oh my, what? And it's your first time, like if it's not your first time, this is not unusual. What? Like this is just constant fun and just not caring about whether or not it's going wrong, because that's one of the things that hold us back, isn't it? And that's one of the things that used to hold me back a lot with knitting, is when I used to look at patterns, I'd be like, oh no, how do I read that? So a little while ago, after I decided to go my own way, because the idea about being in control over something tiny is that you can choose what rules you have. And my rules are quite simple. I change them every now and again. Tubes rule Yes. Keep the colour, like that's the main focus, is because that's what I'm here for, is the fun. And also, be okay to find out if it works. And that's what I do a lot of times, is just try it out. Because if you can just be in charge of something really small, then don't let anybody else or the worry of making the wrong colour choices. Like, I go with all the colours, because then you just can't make the wrong choice, because you constantly just look in them going, ooh, ooh, or you're picking up the other one going, ooh. Like, this is an ace idea. Like, these could be arms for a jumper. You know what I mean? But just keep it super simple and fun, because the idea about knitting is it's not supposed to be about pleasing other people. It's one thing if you're knitting for somebody else. That might be a bit different. But if it's for you, like if you're here watching me do this, you might be wondering, how do you have more fun? You've got to make it more yours. Like, really be quite selfish with your knits. Especially at Christmas time and the holiday season. Like, if you're going to be spending your precious time crafting, because we don't all get a lot of time, that tiny little bit of time you spend crafting, you got to make it count. So today's message from me is, if you are getting your advents out, like for example, I'm popping in some more kits to the shop as well, because my shop works a bit like me at the moment. Whatever I'm excited about will be in the shop. So if you want to know what's in the shop, be on the Squishmas. That's what I'm going to say, because mostly I am just going, I love this. This has been so much fun. Seriously. So there's some bundles going into the shops. If you didn't get an advent this year and you're still thinking of like, yes, I'd like a daily project, because that's quite fun. Small daily projects, go for the win. Bundles like this, or go through your stash and just group colours together. And that's one of the things I love about this. It's hard to call it a job. This experience is that I get to play with colour like this right now. Like, I'm just talking about knitting, but if you've got an advent and you're like, oh yeah, these are 10-gram granny squares. It was going to be a blanket, but I decided to change my mind and turn it into a tube. Tubes for the win. See, you can turn anything into a tube. Tubes for the win. And then imagine this as a jumper. It would be amazing. Like, seriously, like, there's not enough time in the day for all the ideas I have, which is why I've made some more time so I can do some more of those things. But this 10-gram squares, and you could just go wild. I've got a different inside to the outside, because I like things to be enjoyed both sides, because why not? So if you are cracking open a knit, or you're looking for some inspiration, I've got loads of free patterns on the website. Go and download one, hunt for your stash, have a look at what you've got, and start simple. Don't put too much pressure on yourself, because it all goes awry when you start wondering if it's the right thing. Who cares? It's just going to be right for you. Like, I don't check what people think, because I love what I make for myself. And that's what you've got to do. Like, choose colours that bring joy to your life. Colours that make you feel like you're at home. Like, if you're outside, look at that. Like, it's got to fit your landscape. Got to fit your landscape. It's got to fit your mood. I was going to say, fit the landscape with your mood. If you like being outside, bring it inside. Because after all, in these days over the holiday season, it's time to just sit down and have a little think about what it is that you want to do with your knit time, because we've all going to have a little sneaky moment of it. But once we stop feeling in control of what we're making, it takes a lot of the fun out of it. So, Kate's top tips for fun over the holiday season. Number one, don't take it too serious. Seriously. Like, I don't. This is just a portion of some of the things, or some of the colours I've tried over the years. I don't take it too seriously. I'm having fun. If you want to dye yarn, give it a go. Don't get put off by people saying it's really hard. It is. Everyone's got their own way of doing it. Absolutely. But don't let it scare you. Go for a simple Pinterest tutorial with Kool-Aid. Like, it's amazing. And it smells divine. Like, it's the best smelling yarn ever. Like, Kool-Aid, do it. And if you want to knit your own patterns and design your own stuff, do it. I've gone from knitting a tube to making garments, and I'm only just started. Just wonder what you're going to be doing this time next year if you start now on that thing you wanted to do. So there you go. I will be back tomorrow with episode 2 of Squishmas, and this will be available on YouTube and Instagram as well. So if you want to pop over on either one, there's some longer videos on YouTube. And until tomorrow, craft on. And if you can't craft today, just think about what you're going to do when you get the time. And I shall see you tomorrow. Bye.